Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning and welcome to First Coast Connect. I'm Ann Schindler. On today's Friday News Roundtable, it's the biggest stories of the week. A sustained ice storm of a different kind as immigration enforcement impacts everything from campus life to local restaurants. The city looks at extending nightclub hours even as a beloved brewery closes. State health officials are criticized for waiting a week to disclose local measles cases. Mosh delays construction on its new museum, even as its old home is slated for demolition. We'll talk about all that and more with our panel of journalists on our Friday Week in Review. Later, piano prodigies compete to perform at the 2026 Lift Every Voice and Sing Festival. We'll tell you how you can get involved. Join our conversation. Give us a call on air at 904-549-2937 or go to firstcoastconnect.org to find all the ways to connect with us and sign up for our new daily newsletter. It's all ahead this hour after today's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Kristen Wright. President Trump plans to nominate former central banker Kevin Warsh to be the next chairman of the Federal Reserve. NPR's Scott Horsley reports Trump announced the decision in a social media post.
Trump says Kevin Warsh is central casting for a central banker. The president's hoping Warsh will follow his roadmap to lower interest rates. Warsh previously served on the Fed's governing board from 2006 to 2011. During the financial crisis, he served as liaison between the Fed and Wall Street, where he'd worked for Morgan Stanley. Trump has regularly criticized the current Fed chairman, Jerome Powell, for not lowering interest rates more aggressively. The Fed did cut rates 3 times last fall in an effort to shore up the sagging job market. But with inflation still elevated, the Fed opted to hold its benchmark rate steady earlier this week. Warsh will likely face questions during his confirmation hearing about whether he'll exercise independent judgment or simply do the president's bidding. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
Senate Democrats and the White House have reached a deal to largely avoid a partial government shutdown. The plan separates 5 funding bills from a 2-week stopgap measure to fund the Department of Homeland Security. Democrats will not agree to a longer DHS measure because they want to negotiate possible changes to immigration enforcement. Homeland Security has been under scrutiny since federal agents killed 2 protesters in Minneapolis this month. Democrats are calling for reforms like body cameras and no face masks for officers. This is House Speaker Mike Johnson.
The body cameras is something that everybody embraces. We funded it in the current version of the Department of Homeland Security bill. We have $20 million for more body cams. The masking is to protect law enforcement. They're being doxxed and attacked and followed around.
Government funding expires at midnight. A short-term shutdown through at least the weekend is possible until lawmakers in the House and Senate vote. More snow, wind, and cold are in the forecast for much of the southeast Ohio Valley and mid-Atlantic this weekend. NPR's Matt Bloom reports many people are still dealing with the aftermath of last weekend's winter storm.
Brett Tuck runs Brown's Diner in Nashville, Tennessee. He's been without power for almost a week, but he's staying busy.
Do whatever they can. I'm fortunate we had the food truck that I could at least turn it on and cook with it.
He says volunteers brought in generators to help fire up his truck. And he's cooked cheeseburgers and chili dogs for hundreds of people.
So we made a call to all of our staff, and we got some volunteers to come up here and help us get it going. And now we're just grilling as fast as we can to get everybody fed.
He and others are preparing for another bitterly cold weekend, even as tens of thousands remain without power. The National Weather Service says several southeast states could see daily record lows through Saturday. Matt Bloom, NPR News.
Temperatures are hovering around freezing in Nashville this morning. You're listening to NPR News.
Good morning. You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Stephen Ponson. It is now 9:04. The St. Augustine Police Department says former Assistant Chief Anthony Cuthbert is under criminal investigation after financial discrepancies were discovered in the police benevolent organization's accounts shortly after his retirement. The PBO is a nonprofit that operates separately from the department and the city, running on donations from St. Augustine officers. Cuthbert served as its treasurer from 2003 until his retirement this past November. His attorney tells news partners at News4Jax that Cuthbert is cooperating with the investigation. The state attorney's office is reviewing financial records from the last 5 years as part of its investigation. The Cummer Museum of Art and Gardens opens a new exhibit today, curated by University of North Florida students. The Touring the Landscape exhibit examines the connection between landscape, imagination, and nationhood. Students were challenged to create an exhibition that showcased works from the Cummer's permanent collection in new ways. Cummer officials say the result explores the connection between people and place with students. The new exhibit runs through the end of May. It's going to be a mild day here in Northeast Florida compared to this weekend. Highs will reach the low to upper 60s area-wide today, and there could be a few light showers later on tonight. Winds will pick up tomorrow, and temperatures will be between the lower 50s and upper 40s during the day. Then at night, temperatures will fall into the low 20s and upper teens with a wind chill, making it feel even colder, possibly even in the single digits.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Sony Pictures Classics, presenting A Private Life, starring Jodie Foster as a psychiatrist who investigates the sudden death of one of her patients as a possible murder. Now playing in theaters.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Opinions expressed on the First Coast Connect Week in Review are those of our panelists and do not reflect the views of WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome to First Coast Connect. I'm Ann Schindler, and it's Friday, which means it's time for our First Coast Week in Review. Among our topics, locals feel the pressure of immigration crackdowns from food trucks to dorm rooms. A Jacksonville lawmaker wants to roll back vaccine requirements even as measles cases rise. An iconic downtown bar is shuttering, saying renderings and potential don't pay the bills. And the Museum of Science and History pushes back on its completion date for its new North Bank home, even as it pushes ahead with fundraising efforts. To talk about all that and more, I am joined by Mike Mendenhall, Associate Editor and City Hall reporter at Jacksonville Today. Hey, Mike.
Good morning, Ann.
Anthony Austin, reporter and anchor at First Coast News. Hey, Anthony.
Hello, Ann.
Frank Powers, former assignment manager at our news partners, News4Jax. Good morning, Frank.
Good morning. Another cold one in Jacksonville. I saw some frost on the way in, but no ice.
Oh, I see what you did there, Frank Powers.
Oh.
You're getting right into it.
That's the lead in.
We're also joined by Obi Ubana, attorney and political consultant. Obi, good morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being back. So, Frank, like the cold, the activism and concern over ICE has been migrating south from Minneapolis, and we're seeing local protests, but also feeling local impact.
Well, what we see from UNF to Atlantic Beach so far, maybe elsewhere, is that people want local police agencies not to continue with that 287G arrangement. And we've talked about that before. It's a cooperative thing between police and ICE. But it's not as if it's a big deal. The other night, Atlantic Beach said they were going to pause their modification of the 287G agreement. And even the police chief spoke there that night, said, in 2 years, we've had all of 3 encounters. And all of those were when someone was arrested for breaking local law. They found out, well, their immigration status is in question. In all of 2025, all of Florida, there were exactly 2 other examples of that. And those were both JSO. And again, they arrest somebody and find out it doesn't look like he's here illegally. And then they notify ICE. That's it. It's not as if local police are going around with ICE knocking on doors. It's an agreement that's there. But you ask some people in law enforcement agencies about that. They go, yeah, it's an agreement. Wink, wink, nod, nod.
Meaning what?
It's not a priority.
Not a priority. Okay. I mean, Obi, one of the concerns that people have expressed with these agreements is more about optics than perhaps enforcement. To Frank's point, there haven't necessarily been a lot of instances where we've seen local law enforcement agents enforcing, deportation orders
Right.
or participating hand in glove with ICE like that. But given all of the controversy, the recent killings in Minneapolis and all the protests, people don't like the way it looks.
Yeah, I mean, I think public opinion is changing on ICE a little bit. I saw a Fox News poll yesterday that 59% of Fox News viewers are saying they are too aggressive. And what you're seeing is that it's not just affecting illegal immigrants, it's affecting legal immigrants as well. People are they're seeing that ICE is not necessarily very clear about who and where they're going after people, and that is making them change their kind of positions on whether or not they want to go to certain restaurants and do certain things, because they don't really trust that ICE is really going after just criminals and illegal immigrants. So.
The roving patrols have been of particular concern, Mike Mendenhall, and obviously we've seen at the federal level this week pushback on masking of these officers. They're now increasing pressure that they be at least identifying themselves and that they be pursuing people with, specific criminal histories, as opposed to just people that, as we've seen in Minneapolis, just might have an accent, as we've seen, videos, people being arrested for having an accent or taken into custody because they perhaps don't have their papers available. So those have been controversies that have trickled down here in Florida. And, our colleagues at the Jacksonville Business Journal reporting this week that local businesses have seen their business fall off as people are fearful of just being out and about.
Yeah, that was a really interesting piece. I mean, the journalist who wrote it talked to a lot of local business owners, particularly there were a lot of food truck owners that were mentioned there that really rely on that foot traffic, and a lot of them cater to the Hispanic community. And with those people being fearful of going outside, you're seeing far fewer customers, which really can have an economic impact, not just on that businesses, but I mean on individual businesses. But if that continues over time, you're going to start to see a real economic impact. Citywide or in the region, because it's just, if you reduce you reduce that kind of spending, you're gonna see that. And so that really kind of stuck out to me. Another thing that those business owners said in the piece was that they're canceling holiday events,
Mm-hmm.
so which is also I'm sure a large revenue driver for some of those small businesses who are already probably operating on a smaller margin.
Right. Food trucks going to festivals or parties or events like that.
Yeah.
Right. Anthony, one of the things that complicated life for a lot of people who've immigrated to this country is the changing landscape of immigration status. There's people that have their paperwork in order, so to speak, but who have lost their temporary protective status or have, lost their legal immigration status. And so whereas maybe a year or two ago they were here, quote unquote, legally, they're now in a position where they might have to leave, even though they may have children that are legal residents in the United States. They are now having to kind of find a new solutions. And many of them now feeling like they're having to elude or evade law enforcement.
Exactly. Just going off of what Mike was talking about, because we did talk to a number of food owners, and we spoke with one business owner who said they used to have 20 people a day. They would see at least 20 people a day come to their food truck, and now they're only seeing 4. And the woman we spoke with, she said a lot of her relatives, a lot of her friends, like that point that you were just mentioning, and they're feeling unsafe now. They thought that they were okay, but now they don't want to leave their homes. They don't want to go to the grocery store. They don't want to go to restaurants because they're just in fear of what if. What would happen if I am stopped by someone with ICE? So now they're staying home. And so some of these food truck owners, they're either doing deliveries or they're doing call ahead orders so they can just come pick it up and then go back to their home, because they don't know. They thought, well, I thought I was here in this country, legally, I thought I was okay, but now it's just that unknown. Am I okay? Is my paperwork correct? Even if my paperwork is correct, am I still going to be held in some type of detention? What's going to happen to me? So those fears are definitely out there.
Sure. And Obi, we've seen people, getting arrested at court appearances that they're required to attend to make sure that their paperwork is in order. And so, the fear of like whether you're here legally or not, that is a bit tenuous for people right now.
Yeah, I mean, and I think I've said this before on the show. Freedom is a lack of fear, and we used to export that to other countries. People used to come here and they used to see how free our country was, and now we are reverting to a country where if you don't have your papers on you, you could be detained for who knows how long, and then and hopefully released, or if there's a slight error in your papers, you could be deported to a country that you've never been to before. And so it is unfortunate that people are so fearful, and it is now starting to make an effect on the economic progress the city has been starting to make.
We're talking about the week's big headlines with our panel of media experts. And if you'd like to join our conversation, you can give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can go to firstcoastconnect.org as well. Find all the ways to connect with us. We have a call from Steve at the Beaches. Good morning, Steve. Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you, Ann. I have a question that your first media expert kind of downplayed the agreements with local police departments, Atlantic Beach and JSO, of an agreement with to enforce ICE mandates or actions or whatever. I'd like to know more about that. He said something about it not being a done deal or something like that.
It's not a priority, is what I said.
Yeah, Steve, he said it wasn't a priority.
Not a good answer. Can you tell me further?
Go ahead.
They've been doing it for years, and the way that it has been done and continues to be done is if someone gets arrested, they check their immigration status. If it proves that they are not here legally, they go to jail, and a hold is placed on them with immigration. That's what they do. They've been doing that for years. Anybody can go on the jail website, as I used to do daily when I was at Channel 4, and check arrests. And then when you can see the holds. It says right there, they're not hiding.
But what we're talking about that has changed and what...
That is a 287G encounter.
Right, but Atlantic Beach, what they were looking at doing and what they've put on hold for the time being at least is allowing their officers to sort of initiate some of those immigration enforcement actions. Basically, some officers that would be specifically trained to kind of begin themselves that process as opposed to just placing a hold on somebody who's already detained for something else. And that's something that JSO has been engaged in perhaps more proactively than other agencies. But all of the agencies around have these agreements with on some level with ICE to, at the very least, turn over someone who's been detained that is...
and that's about all they do.
So far. That's right. We've got a call from Linda in Mandarin. Good morning, Linda. Go ahead.
Good morning. And yes, I want to speak to the panelists. I know that's what they've done so far, but we're in a different age now, and we can only surmise that at the federal level, the directives that they're getting here aren't different than what they're getting in Minneapolis. So my question is, the two people we saw shot were actually American citizens. They weren't immigrants. They weren't checking papers. They were just shot because they didn't seem to like that they thought they were impeding or not listening to them. And my thing is, if we have everybody that always likes to talk about the wonders of the American Constitution, but we have a paramilitary force that is not subject to that Constitution, don't downplay it. I asked the question previously, when UNF signed an agreement with ICE, it wasn't just for an arrest. It was to allow them, if they determine at some point, to come on the campus. If I'm going to an event on campus and I'm approached by an ICE person, I'm not a student there. I'm an American citizen. Am I subject to somebody coming up and asking for my papers? I thought we got rid of apartheid with South Africa, where people don't have to walk around carrying their papers to prove where they are. Now, if you're arrested, that's different. But if somebody walks up to you and says, where are you from? There's a black nurse in Minneapolis that was someone to the nurse that got shot that now carries her passport.
Yeah, thanks for that comment, Linda. I mean, there was actually a video circulating on social media of a guy who was sort of humorous and also pretty serious. He's got his passport actually duct tape to his forehead as he's riding around the city saying, this is kind of how we roll now. He's, a person with brown skin and an accent and concerned about being stopped and detained. We've got a call from John in St. Augustine. Good morning, John. Go ahead.
Yes. I hear all the time in these discussions about people having to show their papers. But the truth is that the law says that unless you're a legal permanent resident or a U.S. citizen, you actually have to carry your papers with you. So if you're here as a refugee or if you're here as an asylum seeker, etc., you have to have your papers with you. And so all this complaining about people having to show their papers, It's just law enforcement enforcing the law. And if you don't like that people have to show their papers, you should really be contacting your congressman and having them change the law, because these guys are just simply enforcing the law. Similar with the detainers.
John, can I just stop you for a second there, John, and ask? I mean, I think the difference is not that they're stopping people or asking people for their papers who they have a reasonable suspicion of for some reason, but stopping kind of anyone, or people who
look like they might not be here illegally. And there was something.
And so I just want to let John kind of respond to that. I mean, that would be, I think, a distinction.
Then again, your issue is with your congressperson, because the Supreme Court has said that it is legal for them to go up and ask anyone that meets a set of criteria, basically giving them probable cause to go ask the question. And there's nothing wrong with law enforcement speaking to citizens. Citizens don't have to answer. So law enforcement that are not ICE, they go up to citizens every day and ask questions. They go to their door, they ask questions. The citizens can say, I don't speak to police officers without an attorney. They're perfectly able to do that. But the police officers also have the same right to ask questions.
Thanks, John. I mean, Obi, I think that what some people have pointed out is that, if you're required to present papers, the U.S. Supreme Court has basically said in defense of that they can use someone's accent, they can use someone's physical appearance as a justification to ask for papers, which has led to, in some people's minds, a kind of profiling.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue with what this caller is talking about is a difference in enforcement. Really, I think what you can, if you are a legal citizen, you don't have to have your driver's license on you. You could walk around without your driver's license. So you're not going to have something on you just because you are a legal citizen. You're not required to have that. And I think the other part of this is, yes, you can say no to an officer on the street, but you cannot say no now to an ICE officer. And the real issue is what probable cause really means at this point. And is that, having an accent probable cause, and if I don't have my ID on me and my name is African, which it is, but I was born here and I'm a citizen, what at that point do I have to show, right? I don't have to show anything. And I think the problem that people are having is not that people are getting arrested and then being deported. It is the constant abuse of people on the street without any real reason to do that.
And it's been going on to police officers, too. Kind of lost this week was an extraordinary news conference in Minnesota, and it was all chiefs of police, and they were relating how virtually every one of their departments had an off-duty officer who had been profiled, pulled over, said, "Where are your papers?" "Don't have any. You're being detained." And then one gal called in her supervisor, and he made a call, apparently, and then they backed off, of course, without any apology or explanation.
I want to ask, too, I mean, this is not an ICE-related matter, but it does have to do with law enforcement, and it is a bill that's been introduced by a local lawmaker, Senator Tom Leek. He's a Republican who represents all of St. Johns County, also Flagler and Putnam, and he's got a bill that would protect law enforcement officers making arrests while, quote, acting in good faith. And basically what this bill does is it deletes existing law that says officers can't use force if they know that it's unlawful, if they know what they're doing is wrong. This would basically remove that requirement. Mike Mendenhall, it's something that is been supported by other Republicans and appears to be moving forward, but there's also concerns that it could enable people, bad actors.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, pardon me. Yeah, there has been that concern, and it was interesting. This comment wasn't in direct relation to that bill, but recently in a press conference that Mayor Donna Deegan had in her office shortly after the suspension of the city's Hispanic outreach coordinator, which by the way was for social media policy violation, and she's since been reinstated. Mayor Donna Deegan actually made the comment about the sheriff's office and JSO and said that she trusts Sheriff T.K. Waters and his officers to do constitutional enforcement, to use their discretion and to follow the law. So those are the kind of comments that our city, our local leaders and our government leaders are having to make on the record to try to calm people down and to reassure them. Legislation like this, I think we'll call that further into question.
I want to ask you a little bit more about that, Mike, the issue with the suspension of the Hispanic outreach officer for the city, Yaya Cardona. She was reinstated, as you say. Ultimately, what the mayor found fault with was this violation of social media policy, speaking in her view for the mayor. But I thought her comments were, maybe trying to balance something. She'd been criticized somewhat in the Hispanic community from people saying, look, this is literally what she's tasked with. She's a Hispanic outreach coordinator. She is reaching out to the Hispanic community that is fearful and talking to them about, making sure that they have their affairs in order, urging them to comply if they're stopped by law enforcement. And the mayor basically saying, look, someone can say that, but it doesn't have to come from her. She said, there are many organizations in the city that are offering assistance in that regard in terms of allaying fears. She says it doesn't have to come from her mouth, which, it seemed like maybe trying to ride a knife's edge there in terms of what is the role of a Hispanic outreach coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is walking a fine line. And I mean, the Hispanic outreach coordinator, the way the city has defined that position is more of an economic development, economic outreach position. Somebody that's supposed to, help the community, get to resources to better their business's position to get ahead there. That's kind of how they've defined that role. But I mean, it was pretty clear that in Yaya's video, she felt that that her role in the community kind of went beyond that. Now she didn't. I mean, there was nothing in the video itself that said she was doing it in her official capacity as a city employee. However, it did have on her Instagram page that her title at the city, and so I think that was part of the issue there.
Anthony, I want to ask you too about at University of North Florida. There was some controversy this week because there was recruitment officers there from Customs and Border Protection. Now, they're not ICE. They're basically under the Department of Homeland Security in the same way that the Secret Service is or that FEMA is. But there are people that conflate this border enforcement idea, this, Customs and Border, with the work of ICE. And so students and teachers alike were saying, we don't want them recruiting on campus. We think that it is triggering to people, or at least, reinforcing some concerns about exposure for students who may be fearful.
Right. There's been a lot of talk about this on social media. I'm sure some of you've probably seen the picture that someone posted of the table that was set up there on the University of North Florida's campus. And according to the school, they've been coming since 2018. They said this is nothing new. This is not a new invite. Anyone is welcome on campus to recruit if they would like to do so. They say, once again, they've been coming here for years. This is nothing new. But in this day and time that we're living in, a lot of students were concerned because we actually went out to the campus just a few days ago because a lot of students there, they're actually calling for UNF to become a sanctuary campus, meaning that basically this would kind of be a safe space for students who may be undocumented. And they're asking for the school to basically cut ties with ICE because, of course, we know last year there was a directive from the governor asking universities, requiring Florida law enforcement agencies to expand cooperation with ICE. And so that means that the UNF police officers, that they would also be cooperating when it came to ICE enforcement. And students on campus, some of them say, we don't feel safe.
The faculty union, too, is pushing back on that, Frank, saying that they want to basically, end the 287G agreement that the campus police have with ICE. And, they're also saying that the recent developments and the comments surrounding it from the administration are particularly concerning. There was initially, at least, the vice president, J.D. Vance, saying that ICE officers had complete immunity for their actions.
They don't.
Yeah, and he's walked that back a little bit. He now says he never said that. But he did initially say, in regards to the Renee Good killing, they have complete immunity. They're acting under color of law. And we do know that there, as yet, is still no investigation into that.
There is a process for immunity. It is not complete. It is not absolute. It can be challenged and probably will be at some point by Minnesota. But getting back to UNF, what also struck me this week is while there was a pointed statement by the head of the UNF faculty, other members of the faculty who are not tenured did not want to go on the record because they were afraid of retaliation and losing their jobs, saying this is the state of state in Florida these days.
Yeah. And we know that there's been downtown protests that took place keying off of the ICE issues in Minnesota. Those have been happening here, but they've also been happening around the country. We've got a call from Shamari in Southwest Jacksonville. Good morning, Shamari. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning. I'm glad y'all are talking about this. I'm just kind of curious. I don't understand the outrage. Like, as American citizens, I don't really understand the outrage about being able about these law enforcement people being able to stop you and identify you. Throughout the past 15 years in my philanthropic endeavors and working with high-risk youth, I've worked with some high-risk youth in the Atlanta area that lived in what were called high traffic or high drug activity, drug corridors. And sometimes the officers, if you recall the height in New York, during stop and frisk. So we were experiencing some of this in Atlanta with the youth, and so we had to go and research the case law and to see if the police stop you and they want to ask you who you are, do you have the right to remain silent? And the case law from the Supreme Court of Georgia says, yes, you do have the right to remain silent, but the police also have the right to take you in to determine your identity. And then likewise, we know that when we're traveling by car in the state of California or Arizona or Nevada, you come to these agricultural checkpoints and they simply ask you, are you an American citizen? Yes, I am. Have a nice day. So I just don't understand the outrage. Thank you.
Thanks for the comments. We also have an email from Ricardo, who I think is taking objection to the way that we're shaping these 287G agreements to some extent, saying the state basically forced municipalities to sign these agreements under the threat of the governor removing commissioners of these various counties, adding, and the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office is not only initiating stops, but they received $1 million+ reimbursement for it. So it's not fair to say that it's always been done this way. Certainly, I think anybody that has been driving the highway in St. Johns County, OB, has seen a big uptick in the number of multi-officer stops. We know that St. Johns County has been sort of leading the way when it comes to participating willingly in, some level of immigration enforcement along the highway.
Yeah, and I just want to speak to the first caller about outrage. I think people are outraged because they don't want to live in a country where you're constantly being stopped and checked. Like, they want to be able to move around freely and not be stopped and checked. Stop and frisk has been a policy that people have fought against for years because they want to be able to walk around and have freedom. Freedom is not really being able to walk around freely. And I think the fact that it's being done and done in other places, I think isn't good. And people are starting to feel that. And moreover, people that are legal citizens are starting to feel that. And I think that is where this outrage is starting to come from. It's not a policy that people want to live under. And I think, I see this in St. Johns County. People are being stopped. And even people, like I said, legal citizens are tired of just being stopped on the road. They want to get home. They want to be able to kind of live their lives. And I think people are starting to be upset about that.
Frank, I just want you to remind us, because there was an incident in St. Johns County that occurred a couple of years ago that was an apparent, misunderstanding of the identity of someone. It was a young man who was outside a hotel in St. Johns County who was approached by an officer. The officer ended up dying of a heart attack during that encounter. And initially, there was murder charges brought against this young man who evidently didn't understand the commands that he was being given. He didn't speak the language.
Because he didn't speak English. He was on his phone with his mother, and he was racially profiled by the sergeant with the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office. And the sheriff's deputy asked him for papers and identification, which, again, you don't have to have them if you're just walking around. You get pulled over, sure. And the young man did not do what the deputy wanted. He didn't understand him and just smiled and said, "Mother," and held up the phone. And then that led to him being tackled. He was a strong young kid. He was here working on a farm, built like a linebacker, and it took 4 deputies to taser him and subdue him. And during that unfortunate incident, the deputy who initiated the stop dropped dead of a heart attack. There was a murder charge filed. When the autopsy report came out, found out sadly that man was going to die the next time he exerted himself because he had a previous heart attack. They found evidence of that in his heart. They found calcification in his major arteries. So the next time he mowed the lawn or changed a tire, that was going to happen. Once that came out, the state attorney's office dropped the manslaughter charges. He pleaded guilty to a minor charge and was put back into federal immigration custody. Where he is now, I don't know. I think he was originally from Guatemala.
Yeah. And I think he was headed for deportation. We've got a comment from Denise on Facebook saying the mayor may trust JSO, but many in the city don't. We want ICE to unmask themselves and have identity. Doesn't Angie Nixon have a bill on the table about this? And in fact, Mike, that's among the bills that you're following. That's one. Representative Angie Nixon wants to make sure that officers do have to identify themselves and aren't allowed to mask.
Yeah, and she's filed that bill. It's unlikely that it's going to make any headway in the House.
She's a Democrat.
She's a Democrat. Say, yeah. And so being in the minority of party, that could be a heavy lift. I mean, I think the rationale behind filing a bill like that is, I mean, it's a lot of people think it's a level of transparency. It hold and accountability for these ICE officers. Who as we've seen in Minnesota, the ones the folks that are wearing masks, they have very little fear of retribution. I think and a lot of people have accountability, and I think people have postulated that's because that they're hard to identify immediately.
Sure, I mean they've expressed real fear, Anthony, about being doxxed. They say that if they were to identify themselves, that they or their families could be targeted. But it is interesting, certainly this week in the funding debate about whether to shut down the government or not. The requirements that the Democrats are pushing for and that may get some traction with Republicans are things like officers have to identify themselves, officers have to show their faces. Those are things that we almost presumed until very recently were the way things always were done. It's now a sticking point as to whether that norm will continue.
Right. I understand completely what you're saying there, because a lot of us, we always, I was surprised when I found out that these federal agents were going to be wearing masks. And a lot of people do understand the doxing concerns. In case something happens, you can take a picture of one of these federal agents, put their picture all over social media, and then people can find out who they are, get their address. Their family could be in fear of their safety. But once again, if you're an agent, if you're a federal agent, if you're a police officer, you're basically a public servant in a way. And if I'm walking away unmasked and you're asking me different questions and asking if I'm a legal citizen, I should be able to talk to you as well without wondering, are you an actual agent? Who are you walking around with this mask on? You don't want to live in fear that this person you're talking to is not even an actual agent or just someone who's doing whatever they want to do, because you fear sometimes if someone has a mask on and you can't identify them, then that kind of gives them a little bit more freedom to treat you any way that they want to.
If you're just joining us, we're talking to Mike Mendenhall, Anthony Austin, Frank Powers, and Obi Umina about the week's headlines. You can join the conversation on air by calling 904-549-2937 or go to firstcoastconnect.org and find all the ways that you can connect with us. I want to move on now to another big issue and headline this week, and that is the number of measles cases. We're seeing a surge in measles cases happening as South Carolina is actually seeing one of the largest outbreaks, the largest outbreak in this country since the disease was declared eliminated. 2 local children treated earlier this month, Mike Mendenhall. This fact wasn't actually disclosed by state officials or the Duval Health Department. This was something that our colleagues at Channel 4 learned about from a tip, and then were able to verify that there was these 2 pediatric cases.
Yeah, and the health department and the state are receiving pushback. I think News4Jax also had a local physician on there who I believe was with the University of Florida, was quite critical of that the lack of communication from the state, considering how contagious measles are, and we're also starting to see a drop in vaccination rates nationwide. So it's becoming an issue. And it was interesting too. The city this week, the city's top health official in the mayor's office actually came out, and they held a free immunization clinic and was trying to reinforce the fact that these vaccines are safe and try to encourage people who their children are not vaccinated to do so.
Mike, Frank is referencing Jeffrey Goldhagen, who is a pediatrician now, and he is with the UF College of Health, but he's the former director of the health department here in Duval County. Yeah. And he said he called this, quote, professional malfeasance not to notify the public. A week elapsed between when these children were seen at the hospital for emergency reasons and when your old station was learned about it and reported.
And not only were they pediatric cases, but it came out they were from the same household. So obviously one got it and infected the other. I was doing some research on vaccination rates in Florida over the last 5 years, and these are the numbers going back to 2019. 80%, 83%, 83, 78, 84, and that's for 2024. Don't have the numbers yet for last year. The goal is 90%. Herd immunity is 95%. So it's not great. It's not terrible. I'm encouraged by the fact that there was a 6% increase in vaccination from 2023 to 2024, but people just don't trust vaccine. It's went for the government, public safety, the judicial system, and now the medical profession. This is all a result of a lack of trust.
Anthony, it's interesting because while this is happening simultaneously, Republican Senator of Jacksonville, Clay Yarborough, wants to expand vaccine exemptions. He's introduced Senate Bill 1756, the Medical Freedom Bill, which would basically allow parents to opt out of vaccines for new reasons. And he said that he thinks that now 89% of children are considered fully vaccinated. He says he thinks that's sufficient. But this, again, would give one more reason that parents could claim that they don't want their children to be vaccinated.
Exactly. So this bill that he's proposing, before, it would allow, right now in our state, if you have a religious reason that you don't want your child to get vaccinated, you can opt out. But this would be conscience-based decisions as well. So if you just say, I just don't like the idea of vaccinations, this would allow parents without the religious exemption to go ahead and not get their child vaccinated. So basically, he wants to give parents more detailed information about vaccine risk and benefits before giving shots. But Ann, something I thought was interesting, because I wanted to learn a little bit more about measles. Measles is a highly contagious viral illness. And of course, we know it affects mostly children. But listen to this. It spreads through the air when an infected person coughs or sneezes. It's so contagious that according to medical experts, if one person has it, about 9 out of 10 unvaccinated people nearby will catch it.
Wow.
9 out of 10.
That is powerfully contagious. One of the things that we've heard is people who are, vulnerable from a immunological standpoint, OB, obviously at more risk. There are, kids under 12 months generally don't have this vaccination. You are able to talk to your doctor about an early vaccination at 6 months, but there is this, window where children are generally not protected, even if they are going to be vaccinated. And the city has created this weekend, they're going to be doing a free immunization clinic at Regency Library, it's worth saying, on Regency Square Boulevard. That's on February 1st. That's Sunday from 9 to noon. So there are opportunities for people who aren't vaccinated. Apparently, people who are vaccinated in the mid-60s, too, might also need to have an update of their vaccine, because there was a period that they were using a dead vaccine instead of a live vaccine. So people also might need to check if they're kind of in that window.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to say about this, but, I think these are diseases that we have beaten, and to see them coming back is unfortunate, especially because the science doesn't match what people's kind of conscience may feel about them. I do like the city is stepping up and trying to provide access to people that do want to get this vaccine.
I do want to move on to a couple of other topics that we've got at hand. And one is the closure of a beloved downtown bar institution, Intuition Ale Works, announcing this week, Anthony, this is your neighbor, our neighbor, and that, it's been there for 15 years.
15 years. And first, I want to give a shout out to Intuition. I saw the Facebook post. What was that? I think it came out 2 days ago or so. And I couldn't believe that they were closing their doors, because they're, of course, right across the street from First Coast News, and they allowed us to shoot some Ask Anthony promos there on the rooftop. So that's kind of dear to my heart. Yeah, exactly.
Did they give you a beer as well?
Well, I can't talk about that. Of course. But basically, the owner and founder, Ben Davis, he said he's tried for 9 months to sell the brewery, but the right buyer never came, because he basically said, hey, renderings and other things, that doesn't add up to business. And so, I can tell you, being their neighbor, if there's not a downtown event happening, there's not a lot of people over there.
Yeah.
Just because of the location. But when there are events, if there's a Jags game, if there's something happening over at ViStar, you will see people in and out of Intuition. But, Unfortunately, over these past 15 years, they just haven't had the business to sustain it, to keep them going. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Mike, one of the bills that you're looking at in city council has to do with bar hours. And it's kind of interesting at the same time when you have this establishment that really is part of the heart and soul of that part of downtown closing, a push to create opportunities for other bar owners to extend their hours.
Yeah, I think that bill in particular deals with bars that are kind of in the downtown central core, specifically focusing on the Elbow District and Bay Street. And I think it's I spoke with the Downtown Investment Authority's CEO earlier this week, and one of the things that he had talked with me about was really that a priority needs to be walkability of the downtown area and connectivity. And if you look at as Anthony was talking about, you look at the location of Intuition. I mean, and it is quite far removed in the sports and entertainment district from all that, from the more walkable portions of downtown where the nightlife is. So, it is difficult when there's not an event going on over there to get that consistency that a tap room would need to survive. And so the bill itself, I think there are a lot of the bar owners, there are quite a few that have already come out in support of it, because a lot of bigger metropolitan areas keep their places open and are serving longer into the evenings. And so I think the bill introducer, Raul Arias, he feels it's just kind of a natural progression as the downtown becomes more dense and has more foot traffic and more people living down there to increase those hours. But unfortunately, I mean, as the Intuition owner was talking about, and it was saying that renderings of potential don't pay the bills. It again, I mean, that bill came too late for Intuition.
Yeah, and Frank, this place they were sort of pioneers when they arrived.
I've hoisted a few there.
You've hoisted a few there.
With our good friend Nate Monroe.
It does seem that there was an inflection point that was missed, because Rise Doro, that big apartment building right next door,
literally
was just about to begin. I mean, people had already been starting to move in when it caught fire and burned. And so they basically had to start that over. And you wonder if that had not happened, if that would have been enough to kind of keep Intuition holding on until some of these other developments came online.
Well, that was part of what the owner referred to as, delays in development. Now, that was unforeseen, but the Intuition was shut down for months because they were in the danger zone. They were worried about the remnants of that building collapsing. And when they were literally tearing the rest of it out, they were setting up in the parking lot right behind Manifest, which is on the other side of Intuition. It's too bad they couldn't hang on until the Four Seasons opens, literally across the street. That would have been a great boon, and that's why I feel that he didn't find the right owner. But once that hotel opens, someone will reopen Intuition under a new name, because it's just too good a spot.
It does seem like it's going to be a ripe spot. I do just briefly want to talk about another downtown, not a business, but this museum, the Museum of Science and History. We know now that there's going to be a delay in groundbreaking, Mike Mendenhall. How significant is this? This is, the South Bank location is going to be demoed. They're homeless in the interim, and getting into that new facility is of key importance to the museum folks.
It is. I mean, it's a 6-month delay. They were originally supposed to start construction in March. Now that's been pushed back to September. They've been working on that for quite a while. I mean, the city council finalized it this week, so they've been trying to get that delay for a while. Part of it is to give them more time for fundraising. They've already raised over $100 million, including what the $50 million that the city has provided. They've gotten some state money, some large dollar donors from families and business owners here in Jacksonville. I mean, the delay itself pushes the opening of Mosh to 2029. That's a long closure, considering they closed this year. I mean, you're talking like almost 4 years of closure. They're supposed to be doing community events and doing outreach, like going to schools and other civic organizations in the interim to keep their educational component up. But they're also doing this in the middle of trying to find a new CEO, because their CEO also resigned recently. So it's quite.
There's still questions about that, right? I mean, Alistair Dove had been the CEO. We don't really have a good sense as to why that departure happened so suddenly, but maybe you know more about what the impact there is. Is that going to And obviously he's a chief fundraiser. He's the face of the organization. And as they're at this critical juncture trying to raise millions and millions of dollars, what is that a setback?
I mean, for any nonprofit, that would make it difficult because, like you said, the CEO would be the chief fundraiser. Since Mosh was closing, I mean, that facilities project is going to be a primary responsibility for whoever leads that organization. Now the board itself, the Mosh's board has been the one that has really been pushing and leading the way for fundraising. A lot of the board members, including the head of the fundraising committee, is pretty confident that they're going to be able to raise the rest of that money. One interesting comment that happened when that piece of legislation was going through City Council came from Mike Gay, who he's a City Council member and a contractor, and he said, look, the farther we push this out, the more the costs are not going to stabilize. They're going to continue to go up. So the longer you delay groundbreaking, materials, construction costs, they continue to rise. So
it all goes up.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Mike Mendenhall, Anthony Austin, Obi Umana, Frank Powers, thanks so much for being here. Love to see you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
All right. Up next, piano prodigies compete to honor the city's most famous songwriting siblings.
Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Highway, hospital, home, work. Where injuries happen can make a difference in the law and the outcome.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
A new study suggests autism is a collection of distinct biological subtypes, not a single disorder. Our medical experts break it down. On the next, what's health got to do with it?
On the next Florida Roundup, you've probably heard of NIMBY, not in my backyard. What about YIGBY? Yes, in God's backyard. Churches and other faith organizations open up their land to build affordable housing. At least 2 Florida cities are moving forward. So are you a NIMBY or a YIGBY or somewhere in between? Email us radio@thefloridaroundup.org. I'm Tom Hudson. Then be sure to join us Friday, noon until 1.
On the next Science Friday, it's been a brutal flu season with more than 19 million cases in the U.S.
Health officials confirm a new strain of the flu is spreading. It's very contagious and it lasts longer.
What's up with this K variant? Why has it been so bad? And why did the flu shot whiff this year? That's on Science Friday from WNYC Studios.
Today at 2 on WJCT News 89.9.
37-year-old Alex Preddy is shot to death by federal agents in Minneapolis. On the next Friday News Roundup, a second killing at the hands of immigration officials finally gets more reaction out of Congress, and President Trump shuffles leadership of the operation in Minnesota. And what we know about an FBI raid on an Atlanta election office. The News Roundup next time on 1A.
Today starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, young piano players will be competing to perform at the 2026 Lift Every Voice and Sing Festival. It is the second annual festival, and here to tell us about it is Sharon Kuhn. She is the founder and president of Friends of the Brentwood Library and a local legend. Welcome back.
Well, good morning, and thank you for inviting me again.
Well, I'm glad to have you. So this year marks 126 years since Lift Every Voice and Sing was performed for the first time. This piano competition is a tribute to the Jacksonville brothers, James Weldon and John Rosamond Johnson, who wrote this song.
Yes, but it's more than about the piano, the kids performing. The kids are actually participating in making the history, preserving the history, because James Weldon Johnson and John Rosamond Johnson were amazing songwriters and musicians. And we're preparing the kids for our next generation of greatness in the arts and mastering their piano as they did and the contributions that they made.
People, if they want to compete to perform in the February 20th, final day of this event, they have to submit an audition tape by Tuesday, February 3rd. So that deadline is nearing, but they're kind of all age groups. There is a prize for the winner in each category. And this is part of an overall multi-program festival and celebration.
Yes, it is. But what I like it about the most, even with the piano competition, they're going to learn the meaning behind the words, lift every voice, and sing the standards. They're also going to learn the history behind James Weldon Johnson and John Rosman Johnson, so they understand the part of the history tradition that they're going to keep going. The other events that we have that's coming up, we have the exhibit from the Smithsonian Institute, Voters for Women's, that's going to take place at the Brentwood branch. We have this symposium that was written by James Weldon Johnson, topic on our democracy and the ballot, that was written in 1923, that is still relevant to this day, this present in time. That's why history and African American history is American history. That's why it's important that we connect to our past, because there are a lot of life experiences that we learn from that help bring us together to understand. The things that separate us is the ignorance and not knowing. Once we learn our culture and our history, we can embrace the world.
When you talk about the meaning behind Lift Every Voice and Sing, just tell us a little bit about what that is for you.
First of all, I see it as a prayer. When the time James Weldon Johnson was asked to write this speech for the celebration of Abraham Lincoln's birthday, he started off writing it, and then he considered, instead of writing a speech, he wrote a poem. Then he shared it with his brother to turn it into a song. And the beauty behind it, it happened right here in Jacksonville. This is the hub. We are the center of a global figure of James Weldon Johnson right here from Jacksonville. So the song during that time, right after the Civil War period, it was tough. It was during a time when challenges dealing with race relations, dealing with people being hung, lynched. But this song here gives you a song of faith, a song of hope, and letting you know that you can, regardless of what your challenges are in life, you can get through it.
Well, it is going to be a great festival. It's a great annual celebration of the song by James Weldon Johnson and John Rosamond Johnson. It's Saturday, February 7th at the Hicks Auditorium in the main library. It starts at 10 a.m. And again, the deadline to submit a video audition to participate is February 3rd. Sharon Kuhn, thanks so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thanks to everyone for listening and for calling in today. As we sign off, we're going to hear a little of this remarkable rendition of Lift Every Voice and Sing by Baylor University student Jada Holliday. Please join us Monday when we meet the author of a new murder mystery exploring HOA tensions and the internal politics of gated communities. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty, and let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. Scenic Jacksonville presents the Great Cities Symposium on February 5th. Victor Dover, city builder and town planner, shares how he has transformed cities, streets, and neighborhoods through urban design across the U.S. Tickets available at scenicjacksonville.org.